started. That's a wonderful thing.
Oh yes, we spoke of a dictatorship of the proletariat, not a dictatorship of a party, of a central committee, not a dictatorship of one man. No, we spoke of a temporary dictatorship of the working class. The mass of people would take over the state and govern in the interest of all, until the state itself would become unnecessary and gradually disappear. Mikhail Bakunin, of course, disagreed. He said that a state, even a workers' state, if it had an army, police, prisons, would become a tyranny. He loved to argue with me. Do you know about him? Mikhail Bakunin, the anarchist. If a novelist invented such a character, you would say the existence of such a person is not possible. To say that Bakunin and I did not get along is a great understatement. Listen to what he said when Engels and I were in Brussels writing the manifesto. Marx and Engels, especially Marx, are ingrained bourgeois. We were ingrained bourgeois. Ingrained bourgeois. Of course, compared to Bakunin, everyone was bourgeois. Because Bakunin chose to live like a pig. And if you didn't live like a pig, if you had a roof over your head, if you had a piano in your sitting room, if you enjoyed some fresh bread and wine, you were a bourgeois. I grant the man courage. He was sent to Siberia, escaped, wandered the world, trying to foment revolution everywhere. He wanted an anarchist society. But the only anarchism he ever succeeded in establishing was in his head. He tried to start an uprising in Bologna and almost killed himself with his own revolver. His revolutions failed everywhere. But it was like a man whose failure with women only spurs him on to more. Did you ever see a photograph of Bakunin? A giant of a man. Bald head, which he covered with a little gray cap. Massive beard. Ferocious expression. He had no teeth. Scurvy. The result of his prison diet. He seemed to live not in this world, but in some world of his imagination. He was oblivious to money. When he had it, he gave it away. When he didn't have it, he borrowed without any thought of returning it. He had no home. Or you might say the world was his home. He would arrive at a comrade's house and announce, I'm here. Where do I sleep? And what is there to eat? In an hour, he was more at home than his host. There was a time in Soho, we were having dinner, and Bakunin burst in. Didn't bother to knock. It was his habit to arrive at dinner time. We were surprised. We thought he was in Italy. Whenever you heard about him, he was in some far-off country, organizing a revolution. Well, he almost knocked the door off its hinges. Came in, looked around, smiled his toothless smile, and said, "Good evening, comrades." And without waiting for a response, sat down at the table and began devouring sausage and meat in enormous chunks, stuffing and cheese too, and glass after glass of brandy. I said to him, "Mikhail, try the wine. We have plenty of that. Brandy is expensive." He drank some wine, spit it right out. "Absolutely tasteless," he said. "Brandy helped me to think more clearly." He then began his usual performance. Preaching, arguing, ordering, shouting. I was furious, but it was Jenny who spoke up. "Mikhail," she said, "stop. You're consuming all the oxygen in the room." He just roared with laughter and went on. Bakunin's head was full of anarchist garbage. Romantic utopian nonsense. I wanted to expel him from the International. Jenny thought this ridiculous. "Why," she asked, "do revolutionary groups with 6 members always threaten someone with expulsion?" He had 100 disguises because the police were looking for him in every country in Europe. When he came to London, he was disguised as a priest. At least he thought so. He looked ridiculous. Well, he was with us a week. Once we stayed up the whole night, drinking and arguing, and drinking some more, until neither of us could walk. In fact, I fell asleep in the midst of one of his perorations. He shook me until I woke up, saying, "I haven't finished my point." It was that glorious time in the winter of 1871 when the Commune had taken power in Paris. Yes, the Commune de Paris. Bakunin leaped with his full bulk into that revolution. The French understood. They had a saying, on the first day of the revolution, Bakunin is a treasure. On the second day, he should be shot.
Oh.
Do you know about that magnificent episode in human history? The Paris Commune. The story starts with stupidity. I am speaking of Napoleon III, the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. He was a buffoon, a stage actor, smiling to the crowd, while 16 million French peasants lived in blind dark hovels. Their children dying of starvation. But because he kept the legislature, because people voted, it was thought they had a democracy. A common mistake. Bonaparte wanted glory, so he made the tragic mistake of attacking Bismarck's armies. He was quickly defeated, annihilated, finished. Whereupon the victorious Germans marched into Paris and were greeted by something more devastating than guns. Silence. The statues of Paris were draped in black. An immense, invisible, silent resistance. The Germans did the wise thing. They paraded through the Arc de Triomphe and quickly departed. And the old French order, the Republic, liberals they called themselves, they did not dare come into Paris. They were trembling with fear. Because with the Germans gone, Paris was taken over by the workers, the housewives, the clerks, the intellectuals, the armed citizens. The people of Paris formed not a government, but something more glorious. Something governments everywhere fear. A commune. The collective energy of the people. It was the Commune de Paris. People meeting everywhere, 24 hours a day, all over the city, in knots of 3 or 4, making decisions together, while the city was encircled by the French army, threatening to invade at any moment. Paris became the first free city of the world, the first enclave of liberty in a world of tyranny. I said to Bakunin, you want to know what I mean by the dictatorship of the proletariat? Look at the Commune de Paris. That is true democracy. Not the democracy of England or America, where elections are circuses, with people voting for one or another candidate of the old order, where whatever candidate wins, the rich go on ruling the country. The Commune de Paris. It lived only a few months, but it was the first legislative body in history to represent the poor. Its laws were for them. It abolished their debts, postponed their rents, forced the pawn shops to return their most needed possessions. They refused to take salaries higher than the workers. They lowered the hours of bakers. And they planned to give free admission to the theater for everyone. Yes, everyone. Just like the Greek theater. The great Courbet himself, whose paintings have stunned Europe, presided over the Federation of Artists. They reopened the museums. Set up a commission for the education of women. Something unheard of. Free education for women. They took advantage of the latest in science, the lighter-than-air balloon, and launched one out of Paris. It soared over the countryside, dropping printed papers to the peasants with a simple, powerful message. The messages we drop to working people everywhere in the world. Our interests are the same. The Commune declared the purpose of the schools: to teach children to love and respect their fellow creatures. I have read your endless discussions of education. Such nonsense. They teach everything necessary to succeed in the capitalist system. But do they teach the young to struggle for justice? The communists understood the importance of that. They educated not only with their words, but by their acts. They destroyed the guillotine, that instrument of tyranny, even a revolutionary tyranny. Then, wearing red scarves, carrying a huge red banner, the buildings festooned in red silk, they gathered round the Vendome column, symbol of military power. A huge statue surmounted by the bronze head of Napoleon Bonaparte. A pulley was attached to the head. A capstan turned, and the head crashed to the ground. People climbed on the ruins. A red flag now floated from the pedestal. Now, it was the pedestal not of one country, but of the human race. And men and women watching, wept with joy. Yes, that was the Commune de Paris. The streets were always full. Discussions going on everywhere. People shared things. They seemed to smile more often. Kindness ruled. The streets were safe, without police of any kind. Yes, that was socialism. Of course, that example, the example of the Commune, could not be allowed. And so the armies of the Republic marched into Paris and commenced a slaughter. The leaders of the Commune were taken to the Père Lachaise cemetery, put against the stone wall. And shot. Altogether, 30,000 were killed. The Commune was crushed by wolves and swine. But it was the most glorious achievement of our time. Bakunin and I drank and argued. Drank and argued some more. I said to him, Mikhail, you don't understand the concept of a proletarian state. We cannot shake off the past in one orgasmic moment. We will have to remake a new society with the remnants of the old order. That takes time. No, he said. The people overthrowing the old order must immediately live in freedom or they will lose it. It began to get personal. I was getting impatient. So I said, you are too stupid to understand. The branding was having an effect on him too. He said, Marx, you're an arrogant son of a bitch. As always, it is you who don't understand. You think the workers will make a revolution based on your theory? They care not a shit for your theory. Their anger will rise spontaneously. And they will make a revolution without your so-called science. The instinct for revolution is in their bellies. he was aroused. I spit on your theories. As he said this, he spat on the floor. What a pig. This was too much. I said, Mikhail, you can spit on my theories, but not on my floor. Clean it immediately. There, he said. I always knew you were a bully. I said, I always knew you were a eunuch. He roared. It sounded like a prehistoric animal. Remember his size. Then he leaped on top of me. You must understand, the man was enormous. We wrestled on the floor, but we're too drunk to really hurt one another. After a while, we were so drunk that we just lay there, catching our breath. Then Bakunin rose. Like a hippopotamus rising out of a river, unbuttoned his trousers, and began to urinate out the window. I could not believe what I was seeing. What in the hell are you doing, Mikhail? What do you think I'm doing? I'm pissing out your window. That is disgusting, Mikhail, I said. I'm pissing on London. I'm pissing on the whole British Empire. No, I said. You're pissing on my street. He didn't reply. Just buttoned his pants, lay down on the floor, and began to snore. I lay down on the floor myself and was soon unconscious.